Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Well, there's really no news or notes going on. There is some stuff, but very, very minor. The Lions got a guard that I don't even know if he'd be starting. He hasn't really started any time in his career, so I don't really think that's news and noteworthy. We are starting to get a lot more NFL draft stuff, which is great. I'm looking at a lot of Packers, the Packers feed, and aside from frickin' basketball and nonsense that I'm going to start blocking people for putting other sports in this stupid feed. I think it is turning NFL draft, which I love. I'm very, very excited. There's a lot of content, even stuff that's not necessarily Packers related, which is kind of stupid, and it kind of goes to the point where I was hoping that at least Packer fans would begin the process of starting to look at the draft a little deeper. And I understand, like, if this is your, well, I don't know what you do if this is kind of your first go around with the draft. Hopefully you don't develop the bad habits of becoming first round obsessed, and really take a more holistic view. It's a lot, I mean, it's incredible where you feel like you've been looking at this for a long time, and then you find a guy ranked inside the top 200, and it's like, I've never heard that guy's name in my life. Like, how is this freaking possible? It is a lot, but anyways, I'm glad to see a lot of NFL draft talk. It is a little upsetting that even Packers media and Packer fans seem to want to talk about top 5 prospects that have nothing to do with us. Like Arvell Reese. Everybody's talking about Arvell Reese. Who gives a crap about Arvell Reese, dude? I mean, It's generally interesting, as from the NFL draft community with some of the questions, but we don't have these kinds of interests in athletic freaks that are 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round guys or undrafted free agents. I mean, we're more interested in the styles that we can't get than the Lorenzo styles that we can get. So I'm happy that we're moving NFL draft. I think we need to start looking a little bit deeper. Again, my hope was that Packer fans would take a little bit of a deeper approach, but it feels like we're kind of doing the same thing and just talking about prospects that we can't get, which is weird. Anywho, point is, not a lot of news, so we can probably get through quite a bit today, and I don't want to waste any more time talking about nonsense, so we'll start with the pass rushers. If you're new to all this stuff and whatnot, again, we're kind of just trying to take a little bit of a deeper look so that we can have a slightly better insight into what's actually happening. I think it's been very fruitful so far. Maybe not in a good way. The urgency I feel toward, for example, running back and defensive tackle now has made me feel a little bit worse about the situation. Not necessarily worse about the team, but as far as the future of the franchise at the position is not, depending on how things, again, that depends on, for example, Wyatt, and if he gets another contract, and how long Hargrave plays, and how good of a player Warren Brinson is. I mean, there's a scenario where we're totally fine. There's also a scenario where we're not, and I think the fact that there is a scenario where you're not means you have to prepare for being not. You can't be so naive as to say it'll probably be fine and do nothing. Anywho, whatever it is we were talking about, why don't we delve directly into this, and we'll see how much we can get done. Hopefully multiple positions here. Edge is a little bit of a bigger one. We got quite a few people here. Let's actually go through it real quick. So as of right now, Micah Parsons, obviously number one. We said yesterday there's, at least in my mind, a dispute. Is it Wyatt or Hargrave that are our DT1 right now? I don't know the answer to that. Zero debate. Micah Parsons is number one. However, he's injured. We're going to hear incessantly how he's ahead of schedule. It's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. We're going to hear from some people he could return to some variant of saying he could if he wanted to, or is able to, or is in good enough condition to return week 1, whatever. Those things are going to come out. It doesn't matter. He's going to be out for some time. Our edge number 2, I think, is we're talking even post-draft. Parsons is number 1. I don't see a scenario at all where Van Ness is not number 2. Even if we get a guy right off the bat in the second round and he looks incredible in training camp, it's not going to be enough to bump Van Ness, which, Van Ness would be one in this instance. We'll see what happens when the season starts. After that, I do think it gets a little bit more muddled with Rashawn Gary being gone. We got Barron, Sorrell, and Brenton Cox. I think that's very clearly our number 3 and 4. How that's sorted, I don't know. Again, I'm happy for Brenton Cox that he's kind of in that position now. I think he's earned it as a guy that I didn't know was even going to make the 53. To now be potentially our edge 3 on the team is pretty impressive. Barron, Sorrell, I think, as I said, probably massively overhyped by the fan base. However, didn't get a lot of opportunities. Obviously, he's way down on the list. He is a 4th-round pick, so we have high expectations for him. Year 2, you hope to see some kind of a jump. Ideally, we see that start in training camp. I think we can't also dismiss we have a new defensive coordinator and a new scheme and all new alignments and all that different stuff. And so that may positively or negatively affect any one of these guys. It could, be bad for Van Ness and Cox and phenomenal for Barron Sorrell. In fact, I am curious about Brenton Cox because I remember my comment about him is that I think it might actually benefit him to be more of a 4-3 defensive end. We'll see. After that, we have Colin Oliver, who's very interesting. And I think even maybe more so now with the 3-4 because you can see him as a smaller stand-up outside linebacker. Remember, he's sort of a kind of like a Micah Parsons type. He's an off-ball linebacker / edge rusher, kind of a tweener, You're not really sure what he can be. I know they had said that they wanted to try him at off-ball and see how it goes and maybe evolve from there. It looks like at this point we're sticking him at edge. I don't know. He ended up getting hurt. We didn't really get a lot to get to see him very much. I will keep saying this, and I probably shouldn't, but I don't have high expectations, just like with any draft pick. But I think especially with him, not only is he a 5th-round pick, which is a little bit later, but also just his build. I mean, it's not impossible, especially if you're talking like he could develop into a 3rd down and long pass rush specialist, maybe. But I think it's a long shot for him. And Aaron Mosby, who I mentioned we just signed, and I do like him. I think you can probably pretty fairly say that is our, 5 and 6. And then after that is Dante Barnett, which would be our 7 right now at edge, pending, again, any draft stuff. So, all right, let's dig a little bit deeper into some of these guys. We can start off with the injury, and I've mentioned this now several times, but we'll go over it again. When it comes to injuries, when we went and did like a little bit of a deep dive, and I thought it was pretty informative because it kind of helped to reinforce the idea that teams, it honestly doesn't matter what the medical people say in terms of everything looks good. There is a period of time that you will not play. And the reason is the data will very clearly show, especially for defensive linemen, edge rushers. Those guys are the most impacted by things like ACLs, unfortunately. If you look at the, how many years are shaved off or whatever stat you're looking at, all of which gets worse after an ACL, how many less years, how many less snaps, how much less productive, whatever. One of the biggest and most major indicators in terms of is it real bad or is it maybe just a little bad is how quickly you returned. There are stories of guys, especially a long time ago before there was kind of this default thing where, if you can play, you play. And so guys were kind of rushed back. Those guys, their careers ended much earlier. And so the bottom line is it doesn't matter if you see a video of him doing backflips or sprinting or cutting or any of that stuff. Because as it is now, and I hope for whatever reason the Packers don't deviate from this, I don't think they have, I don't think they will, there is just a set period of time. You tore your ACL, you will not return before this date, period. Well, he's ahead of schedule. Doesn't matter. I'm glad he's ahead of schedule, but doesn't matter. Well, he's a freak. He's a different kind of human being. I believe that. And I'm sure he can heal his body with you know, just the fact of how much of his superhuman DNA mixed with the work ethic, mixed with the medical staff that he has access to, mixed with the medicine he has access to, mixed with the discipline he'll have, not just in his regimen, but his diet and his medicine and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm sure. Doesn't matter. So he had surgery around December 29th. Standard NFL ACL recovery for a high-level pass rusher is 9 to 12 months until full game readiness. 9 months from December 14th lands around mid-September 2026. The 2026 NFL season opens on Wednesday, September 9th, with most games that weekend. The most optimistic timeline would be week 1. Again, this is not a thing, really. Even Micah Parsons, who has lofty goals, called it lofty. Now, among his, I guess here's one thing you could say. Best case scenario, the Packers do not put him on the PUP list to start the season. That would mean they believe it's at least possible, because he is valuable enough that if there's a 5% chance that he can play, 4 weeks from now, we're going to take that chance because we need him on the field no matter what. In fact, if I had to guess, they're not going to put him on the PUP list just for that exact reason. We don't want to limit ourselves to not being able to bring him back. With that said, he could be out 4 weeks. Remember, it's 9 to 12 months. Now, it's probably not going to be 12 months, but if it's 12 months, that's basically the entire NFL season. We also have to remember, think about how when Micah Parsons came in with that back injury, it was kind of like a weird lingering back injury thing. And it seemed like it really wasn't bothering him at all. He seemed like he was very upset that he was being held over on the sideline, but we still held him over on the sideline. So let's say he comes back week 3. How long before he's playing full time as opposed to, why don't you run out there on 3rd down? Is it going to be like a 2 to 3 week ramp up? So maybe he plays week 3, week 4, plays a little bit more week 5, and then by week 6 or 7, he's full-time? I don't really know. Now, again, if we're talking most optimistic, he's playing ready to rock and roll week 2, full-time starting and all that, then we can kind of go back to the conversation. Not that we would know necessarily, but we can go back to that conversation of how desperately do we need to draft somebody? Because that's basically the entire season with Micah Parsons. It's not a big deal. If it's week 7, that's a huge difference, depending on, again, how good is Van Ness, how good is Brenton Cox, how good is Barron Sorrell, how good is that rotation? Because remember, we're going to have, let's say, Van Ness and let's call it Barron Sorrell as our starting pass rushers, which already I don't know how good or effective that's going to be. Primarily, we might actually have a lot of our pressure come from the interior this year with Hargrave and Wyatt, but whatever. If Van Ness and Barron Sorrell are a kind of weak starting pass rush, think about how often, well, I guess we don't know with our new defensive coordinator, but the Packers like to rotate, whether that might be a head coaching thing, I don't know, their pass rushers. How much, Brenton Cox and Aaron Mosby or Colin Oliver are we going to see? A ton. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that kind of sucks. And I like Mosby, but I like Mosby as like we rarely see him number 5 type of guy. Not as like a starting second string guy that plays 30% of the snap count. So, it's painfully obvious, but Micah Parsons is make or break for this team in a pretty big way. And look, our quarterback is massively important, and all these different things are massively important, but the massive difference that he makes as far as our ability to rush the passer and how big of a difference it makes when you can or can't rush the passer in terms of how good you are. If you can't rush the passer, your defense sucks, period. If you're very good at rushing the passer, your defense is awesome. There is no nuance to that. As far as his contract, there isn't a ton. He just signed it, so he's going to be around for a while. You look at, he has a $19 million cap hit this year. It does go up to 27 next year, which is manageable, certainly, but expensive, especially with Jordan's, whatever that's going to be. So we'll have to see, if they end up moving money around or whatever. 2028 is when it gets to the point of we have a decision to make, because then it jumps up to $42 million. That's when he's 29 years old, which shouldn't be a problem. But remember, he's an undersized pass rusher. Some of these freak pass rushers can do it, but, Khalil Mack's a big boy. Actually, I think, what is he, like 250 actually, now that I think about it? I don't know, whatever. I don't know, especially with the ACL and everything. Hopefully, again, he's just a freak and everything's fine, but I don't know what he looks like at 29 going on 30. Because at that point, it's a $42 million cap hit with a $40 million dead cap hit if we end up moving on from him. Although there is an option in there. Hold on, let me read that real quick. Option bonus, it says 27. It's not 27 million. I don't know. I'm not. That's there's some wild stuff in there. There's going to be options. I'm not going to try to figure that out right now. But $20 million option proration. I don't even see the bonus in here. Whatever. We'll have some decisions to make at that point, but it's not worth really talking about right now. He's obviously here for the long haul and good. This is a special opportunity we have to have a truly special player, and I'm not going to squabble about the price. I mean, this is the kind of thing that freaking dreams are made of right here. Lucas Van Ness, and I've been hanging on to this for a while, but the big question is the fifth-year option. Are they going to do it? And some guys have already gotten their fifth-year option. I don't know. I don't know what they're contemplating. The fact that it's done now is not really a massive deal, though. It looks like if we go back to Devontae Wyatt, they exercised his on April 30th, one day before the deadline. So taking it down to the wire is not something to be not expected. I said that in a stupid way, but you get what I mean. It's not an emergency that it hasn't been done yet. So the question becomes, obviously, and I just mentioned with the Wyatt thing, it kind of put us in a tough situation. Part of that, though, is his age. That's kind of a big part of the equation. But still, I wanted to do it. I think I'm glad we did it. I don't know, but I don't know. As far as Lucas Van Ness, again, should they give him a fifth-year option? Now, Van Ness is right now 24 years old. So you figure, by this time next year, he'll be 25. So we're not in that 28-year-old bind. It says the cap hit here would be $14.4 million, which seems odd because he was drafted before Wyatt, so it was an earlier pick. It was a year later. The position is at, I don't know exactly what this is all based on, the fifth-year option thing, but I find it odd that it's the same or less. I don't remember what Wyatt's is, but it feels like it's a little bit less than what he had. Anywho, I think just off the top of my head, I don't. Oh man, see that's the tough part. Part of me wants to just say no. Just you have to you got to kind of prove your worth here a little bit. I don't know if you can do it, and I'm just not super interested in just giving you $15 million next year if I don't really know. The thing that's tough though is we're not in a position of having a lot of really good edge rushers. We got rid of Rashawn Gary, who's a first-round pick. This is a first-round pick. He's a pretty talented guy. How talented, we don't really know. How good is he going to be in this scheme? We don't really know. But we're putting ourselves in a position where we could possibly lose him to free agency if we screw around. And, more than likely we'd be able to sign him to another contract or whatever. But I don't know. It's a dangerous game to play where we could have banged up or slightly tarnished. I hate to be over dramatic, but whatever. Micah Parsons, no Rashawn Gary, no Van Ness, and what? Brenton Cox is your next man up. That's not a good spot to be in, especially with 2 years of no first round picks. So, I don't know. Maybe it is the right thing to do to just give it to him. And then next year, if he balls out, then we could talk about an extension by next year, and we don't even have to worry about it. And if he didn't, then he has one more year to kind of prove his worth or whatever. I don't know. I guess I would probably lean a little bit toward we should do it, but I'm very much on the fence about that. Barron Sorrell, there isn't much to say. I mean, I said most of it yesterday. Again, and I'm not trying to just dump on the guy. I think that there is a massive course correction needed because the perception is that he actually is really good, and in reality, he wasn't very good. Very, very small sample size. Doesn't mean he's not going to be good. But, we can't start putting him in the win column before he's actually done anything. So that would be the only note on Sorrell. He, like Brenton Cox, presumably, again, we'll see what happens in the draft, are going to get a massive opportunity to demonstrate that they can be better than just like third stringers. Ideally, this is a great duo with Brenton Cox and Barron Sorrell, and we have nothing to worry about. But we'll just have to see. As for Brenton Cox, he is currently on a 1 year, $1.1 million, his base salary is 1.1. His cap hit is, let's call it 1.5 million. Look, the pay is kind of indicative of where the Packers are at with him, meaning we don't really want him to be starting. And right now he might be, again, without Micah Parsons. So when I say that edge rusher is not really something we should overlook, this is kind of where I'm coming from. Van Ness is a question mark. Brenton Cox is a short-term, 1 year, $1.5 million fill-in. Warren Brinson has proved zero. So, and again, I'm going to the most extreme side of this, just like I did with defensive tackle. It's entirely possible Parsons is fine and Van Ness is really good and Barron Sorrell is going to be good, and then we've got 3 solid options with Brenton Cox being a decent number 4. But again, look at the money. Has Van Ness gotten his 5th-year option yet? As of now, no. Is Micah Parsons going to be okay after the ACL? We have no idea. Has Barron Sorrell proven to be anything? No. Did the Packers trust Brenton Cox at all? No. They've given him $0, basically. So, again, I will stand on what I said, and I know a lot of people disagree. I think the Packers will go into this feeling that edge is probably a bigger need than a lot of the fan base would agree that it is. And then again, when you look at positional value, you can say, well, it's not as big of a need as X, Y, and Z. Yeah, but from Goody's standpoint, if you're talking about a premium position as compared to like defensive tackle, as compared to, interior offensive line, running back, yeah, I think, corner's a big one, no question. Edge, I would guess, is right up there with it, if I had to guess, as far as Gutekunst's preferences. After that, again, not much to talk about. Colin Oliver, rookie, hasn't done anything. Mosby, similar situation as Brenton Cox, and then Dante Barnett, we haven't seen yet. So, all right, let's take a break. We'll come back and do, I guess, linebacker. Linebacker next. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, so our linebackers include Edgerrin Cooper, Zaire Franklin, Tyron Hopper, Isaiah McDuffie, Christian Welch, and Nick Niemann. The positive here that I don't know that we really have anywhere else, and it's not to say that this can't go south fast, as we've seen in other players, but I feel like at least with Edgerrin Cooper, we can finally say, here's a guy that is young, talented, he's here for the long haul. So I feel good about that. Do we have a guy to go next to him? Not really. We went out and got Zaire Franklin, who I believe will be starting. And I think what that indicates is we don't have the guy next to him, and he's holding the place for somebody. Could that be Tyron Hopper? I don't know. I hope so. Could that be McDuffie? Probably not, but, we'll see. At least for a while, it could be. But I think we have Cooper. I think we have a placeholder for Zaire Franklin. We have Tyron Hopper and Isaiah McDuffie auditioning to be like legit number 2s, pending, if Zaire is going to be here for like a year or whatever the case may be. I think McDuffie and Tyron Hopper are both young enough that you could argue that they have the ability to be a number 2, not just short term, but long term. If this thing could speed up, I could see how old Tyron Hopper is. Isaiah McDuffie is 26. Yeah, and Hopper's just 24. And I like Hopper. And remember, I mean, he's a relatively early pick, you know? So I don't know that we should assume that he's just some cast off. Third round pick. I mean, it's not that we have a great hit rate there, but there's still the third round expectation. We're not going to put it on a curve because Gutekunst and going back to Ted Thompson, we just can't hit in the third round. I mean, I guess if we grade you based on where you probably should have been drafted, then maybe it would be a little different, but whatever. We took you in the third. But I like Hopper, and I think he's done a decent job. And McDuffie, I think last year was pretty ugly, but we've seen him play a positive role, so I think it's just going to depend how he's used. If they can kind of put him in an advantageous situation, again, just like every other position and player on this defense, this change in scheme can very much help you. It can very much hurt you. So we'll have to kind of wait and see how that goes. Obviously, Cooper is the big asset here where we have to hope that this doesn't hurt his play style and actually helps his play style. But not much to say about Edgerrin Cooper. He is, he's here, and pending something catastrophic at some point, I don't know, next year, 2 years or something, he'll be getting a contract extension and hopefully a very big one. Not that I want players draining our salary cap, but I mean, if he doesn't get a big one, then something went wrong. Zaire Franklin, he is 29 years old. He'll be, July is his birthday, so he'll be 30 by the time the season starts. He's here on a 2-year contract. It's a very low contract. His cap hit goes up from $7 million to almost $11 million next year. His dead cap goes down from 3.7 down to 1.8. We have zero commitment to this guy whatsoever. I mean, we could cut him this year and it wouldn't hurt. That's saying something when you can sign a guy and cut him the same year on a $18 million contract and be like, never mind. It wasn't that. We changed our mind. But I mean, it's also a decent place to be in. If he can earn a $10 million or $11 million contract, if he can play that well, even just as like a role player, that Mike linebacker that can make tackles and allow Edgerrin Cooper to go clean up, screw it. I'll pay him $11 million, especially while we have Cooper, who's worth way more than what he's getting on his rookie deal. When you look at the two combined and what you're paying both of them, yeah, I don't care. More than likely, I don't think he will earn that, and I don't think he's going to get an extension. So, possibly a pay cut could be in order if they decide that an $8 million base salary is a little high for his services or something. But I think we treat it as a 1 year, similar to Javon Hargrave. We shouldn't expect him to be here beyond a year, so we need to kind of plan accordingly with that. And so when you look at the need of linebacker, we have Cooper and what? Well, again, this is a Tyron Hopper and Isaiah McDuffie tryout. And I genuinely don't think McDuffie can really do enough to prove that linebacker is just something we can ignore. Not that we ever would, but as far as we don't need to find somebody better, I think McDuffie can be a really solid player, a guy that can contribute on special teams, and a decent cleanup and tackle guy. When he's at his best, that's just, you'd see him fly across the screen and make a tackle. I was like, oh, good job, bud. That was nice. You can kind of tell where a guy is based on your reaction and the tone in your voice when you have that inflection when they make a play. That sort of shocked, like a little child. Like, oh, good job, bud. That was good. You're doing a good job. That's like 3 tackles today. You're doing a great job. That's how you know he's a backup. So it's probably more of a Tyron Hopper audition to see if he can kind of fill that role. And I maybe I shouldn't say that because, again, I think Matt LaFleur loves McDuffie. But we have a new special teams coordinator and a new defensive coordinator, and what they say about McDuffie is going to have a massive amount of weight. So all that to say, linebacker, I'm not going to say is a need, but it, like a lot of other positions, would it shock me if we went linebacker? Not really. Not really, because you're looking for a starting inside linebacker, right? You got 2 of them. Okay, one is Edgerrin Cooper. Long term, who's number 2? If you can't answer that confidently, then the reality is we can go into this draft with the expectation that if there's a solid linebacker that they like a lot that fits the Zaire Franklin mold, a Mike linebacker, a true inside, shed blocks and make tackles guy that they think is as on the level of Edgerrin Cooper or something, or is just a guy that can be a starter above and beyond what you're getting from McDuffie and Hopper, then I think it's reasonable to assume that it's a possibility that they draft him. And I kind of think that's where we are. And I'm noticing that's a lot of these positions. If you're asking me about 2026, we don't have a lot of needs. If you're asking me how incredibly confident I am, and this is weird for a young team, because usually that's the benefit of being a young team is you have the long-term security. But just the way it's kind of distributed, especially in some of these positions, how confident are you in 2027 or 2028 in the position? It goes way down, right? Zaire Franklin and Hargrave and, different guys that are on final years of their deal or whatnot, running back, tight end with the Musgrave questions. And again, 2026 compared to 2027, it's if nothing else, a very big audition year for a lot of guys. And we're all we need to be on our knees begging these guys to show up and show out. Please don't do what everybody else, especially on the offensive line, has done, which is said, this is my audition year, which means I'm going to have the worst year of my entire career. I'm going to embarrass myself to the point where I will make not only will I not come back to this team, I will struggle to make any money anywhere in the NFL. Please don't do that, Luke Musgrave. Please don't do that, Carl Brooks. Please don't do that, Brenton Cox. Tyron Hopper and Isaiah McDuffie, please don't do that to where we're sitting here saying, yeah, we got some work to do, boys. We better find somebody else because this ain't going to work. That's what we can't have happen. So we'll see. The other thing is that, I know we're limited on picks. Next year is a better year, fortunately, with the slightly less than what we thought, but the solid compensatory pick situation that we're in. But the bottom line is what I'm realizing going through this is that even though it might not be the absolute top guys, it's not. We have Tucker Kraft, we have Edgerrin Cooper, we have all Micah Parsons. When you look at depth long term, there are serious question marks. And the gap between, are we going to have like a lot of teams have where they got the one elite guy and then garbage? Or are we actually going to have good duos, good trios, good depth? A big part of that, outside of can these guys please take a step, is going to be the drafting. Can you find those guys in this draft? Can you find the complement to Cooper? Can you find somebody to put next to Wyatt? Can you find another guy, a third, let's call it third with Parsons and Van Ness, pass rusher? That is a guy that we can actually trust. Can you find a running back to eventually take over for Josh Jacobs? Because it seems like Marshawn Lloyd is not going to do it. And let's be honest, we know Chris Brooks is not that guy. Can we find corners? You know what I mean? If we don't take a step, if we don't find some guys here, in 2 years, we got Jordan and we have Parsons, who's getting older at this point, and we got Watson, who hopefully is healthier now, and we have Tucker, who hopefully is staying healthy, but we're hollowing out in a big way. And it's already a little scary that we're going out and doing the whole let's go get 33-year-old guys thing. Now, I think it's fine to do that on occasion, especially when you get a new defensive coordinator who specifically has worked with Zaire Franklin and knows that he can handle my scheme and all that kind of stuff, who has specifically worked with Javon Hargrave and know that he can work. Okay, fine. We can do that. We can make some exceptions, whatever. But we can't get into this thing of doing what the Minnesota Vikings do, or some of the other teams like the Bears have done, or whatever other teams where we can't draft. And so the only thing we can do is patch up a ton of holes, and you can't do that with elite players. So what do? You go out and find a bunch of old, overpriced, but still relatively cheap because they're used goods players to come in and Band-Aid these things. You have to, I mean, not that I'm saying anything new here, but the drafting has not been phenomenal. And some of this hollowing out from the inside is a result of that lack of drafting. So guys that we have to step up, and Gutekunst is going to have to find some depth. And, the benefit is we don't necessarily need that number one. If you find a blue chipper out there in the mid rounds, hey, awesome. Well done. Go get that fourth round premium pick that you guys have been so good at. Whatever. But we need a number 2 defensive tackle, a number 3 edge rusher, a number 2 linebacker, a number 2 tight end. Another kind of 1.5 running back that'll eventually take over. That doesn't necessarily have to be as good as Jacobs or whatever, but he's got to be a starting running back, We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I enjoy this stuff. I think for all 32 teams, it's fun. It's a puzzle. How do you manage it? How do you navigate it? But at the end of the day, some of this stuff is just execution. It's not a question. It's not a puzzle. It's not a freaking riddle. It's do your job. You have to get it right. And I understand that some of this is a guessing game and it's not a perfect science. Fine. Then I guess I'm asking you to get lucky. You have to get lucky. You have to do a good enough job to position yourself to be in a decent position to get lucky this year, because you've been significantly unlucky the last several years. And as fair or unfair as it may be, if you are unlucky again, I have to get off the Goot train. I can no longer be a Goot licker if we go into this year looking at the draft class going, we're getting nothing, and I don't really feel like we're going to get a lot. I can't continue to defend that. And again, I'm not asking for a ton. I'm mostly asking for 2s and 3s and 4s. Right? So, boy, oh boy, let's see what we can do here. We need a Goot masterclass. And unfortunately, we don't have 11 picks like we had in 23 and 22 or whatever. Excuse me, where, you have the luxury of, hey, there was like 4 or 5 really good players. And it's like, well, that's 50% of your class, which is still a good hit rate. But also look at how many picks you made. It was to your bet. I mean, it's awesome. But you don't have that now. So now you have to be even better. I can't even necessarily praise you for hitting on 40% or 50% of the draft class, because that's not enough. Especially when we talk about hit, we're kind of talking about marginally a contributor. I mean, if we're talking 50% hit rate, that's like 3 guys. I mean, depending on how good those 3 guys are, maybe if it's all the exact right positions and they're good enough, then yeah, we'll call that a hit. But if it's like a 7th round, like, oh yeah, that's cute. If it's kind of like a McDuffie type, where it's like he's fine, but he's not gonna, I would never want him to start, that ain't gonna cut it. I mean, it sucks because I have to be unreasonable right now to Brian Gutekunst. What I would normally expect as a solid enough hit rate is not going to be good enough this year. Because again, I'm not just judging you based on 1 year, I'm judging you based on the last 2 to 3 years. It's kind of like when you have a 2.1 GPA and you got 1 year left. You can't be good enough. You have to like ace all of your classes just to frickin' graduate. I don't know the exact math, but I was in that situation at Whitewater. It's like if I get straight A's, I think I still can't get into the College of Business. So probably should just drop out of college here. Because let's be honest, I'm not getting straight A's, and even if I did, it wouldn't be good enough. So I guess we're done here. You have to get an A, okay? I'm not going to say straight A's. You got to have an A. And I'm not talking about like prior to the season, what is freaking ESPN grade? I don't give a crap. They're idiots. They're freaking stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. I care about results. And again, part of me being unreasonable is going to be asking you to do things that I think when people say it, it's kind of stupid. For example, we need immediate contribution. That's not what the draft is for. And if a guy contributes after 2 to 3 years and he's there for 4, 5, 6 years, that's not a miss. Nobody's going to look at that and be like, yeah, but he's a good player and he has been for a long time. But his rookie year, he didn't start as much. So I think it's a bad pick. Nobody says that. Okay? Still, I'm laying out a couple things on my checklist that I really think we need from you this year. And some of them are going to be the hit rate I expect from you is going to be a little unreasonable. The quality of the players probably going to be a little unreasonable. The how early they need to be able to show up and contribute and help this team win a freaking Super Bowl is unreasonable. Maybe part of my zeal here is that I had a dream. I don't remember exactly how it went, but I had a dream that it was like I knew the future and I knew this year we were winning the Super Bowl, and it was like I was going to miss it or something. I don't know exactly what the stupid dream was. But it was like I was like this euphoric, like, holy crap, like we're actually going to win it this year. I don't know how I could see the future, but I could. And it was just like, wow. It was just this crazy feeling that I had. And then you wake up and you look at it and go, why the heck? Why aren't we going to win the Super Bowl? Screw that. We're going to. So let's look at it. We'll do one more thing and I'm going to get out of here. Let's look at it backwards, okay? Packers won the Super Bowl. In your imagination, we're all role playing here. Don't make it weird when it's not. It's football role play. Let's grow up a little bit, for crying out loud. Packers won the Super Bowl, okay? Let's reverse engineer that a little bit. What happened? Now, I'll stand by what I've said in the past. If we win the Super Bowl, 90% of that or more is going to come from guys that were already in the building. It's Jordan, it's the receivers, it's Tucker, it's our coaching staff, it's all that stuff. That's the vast majority of everything. But what else went right? At the very least, it's an either or. If we didn't hit in the draft, then all of Gutekunst's draft picks previously did hit, which is still to his credit. All of a sudden, the 25, 24, 23 class just blew up, right? Morgan is a beast. Belton is a beast. Maybe Sean Ryan is playing really, really well. Musgrave, Wyatt, Van Ness, you know what I mean? Either that or this draft class did something. It can't be neither, right? I mean, you can maybe tell me that there's a world where there was unbelievable health. Like basically nobody got hurt and we just powered through with freaking Jordan on one side and Parsons on the other and we just willed it to happen. Yeah, maybe. But a lot of things would have to go right. And again, I think it's either or. Either this draft class really contributes or previous draft classes proved that, you know what, you thought he didn't really hit in those classes, you were wrong. And I'll take either. That's your freaking mulligan, Gutekunst. If those guys pop off, don't give a damn about this class at all. At least until next year when I say, okay, your turn. This year, though, absolutely. I will take Matthew Golden and Jordan Morgan blowing up. I don't even need to look at the rest. Like that, okay, you win. You win. As long as Parsons comes back healthy, boom, I'm happy. Good job, Goot. You freaking rocked it. You get another year of me getting off your case and staying on the old Gootlicker train. But again, it has to be one of those two. Ideally, both. That'd be cool. Hey, who knows? Maybe Marshawn Lloyd is healthy and awesome. I don't know. But it can't be Morgan is Belton is bad. Golden, I don't know if he's bad or just still not getting the ball. I don't know what's going on with that. Musgrave definitely is not the answer. Lloyd, not the answer, hurt, whatever. Wyatt, Van Ness, all these things are And also, the freaking draft class is just doing nothing. Like, I mean, in that case, bro, I can't do it. So, anywho, there's your edge class and your linebacker class. By the way, Nick Neiman, Christian Welch, Jamon Johnson rounding out the group. We don't need to super elaborate on that. I was kind of going off on a tangent there, but I think we'll leave it at that. I was going to do break and then corner, but then it dawned on me corner safety tomorrow would just make the most sense, so I think we'll just end it. It's time to end it, Paul. What's that movie from? Just saying. Very good movie. Beep boop boop. I think that's it. All right, I'm out of here. You all have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.